Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar, which is all about, is good enough good enough? Hope you understand that. We've worked with Frost Sullivan over the last 12, 18 months, ever since really the pandemic hit, to try and understand how the future of the workplace is going to look when it comes to meeting and collaborating with our fellow employees and our fellow associates. F&S have got a large client base of some of the world's biggest customers and provide insights on how things will be going forward. Shure, on the other hand, are always looking to give customers advice not just on products, but on trends and best practices in with the audio world as well. So the two of us combined have got together to try and put together this piece of work that will hopefully help and enable decision makers and IT and audio people to be in the best possible place to host good meetings, good collaboration between the people they work with. My name is James Hill. I'm the director for the UK systems team at Shure. I'm joined today by my boss, Rob Smith, who's
Hello.
the senior director for Western Europe for integrated systems. And also at the far end, Mr. Robert Arnold, who's the principal analyst of connected work at Frost Sullivan. So thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Hope you enjoyed the webinar. We're going to be taking your questions at the end, hopefully giving you some good answers, and hopefully you'll walk away from today's webinar understanding where we are, where we believe the world's going when it comes to meetings, and we'll all have a bit of a better idea of how we're going to work together going forwards. So today's agenda, obviously welcome and housekeeping. We've pretty much done that. The focus of the webinar, which will be trends in meeting rooms, how to address these challenges that we're facing today, and what we're going to do about this moving forward. And at the end, we'll move to your questions and answers. So please have those ready and start getting them to us as you can. And over to you, Rob.
Great. Well, thank you, gents, and thank you for having me. I'm a principal analyst at Frost Sullivan, and we research the market for business communications technologies. We look at trends in adoption and development, and we help people to understand the way things are moving forward. So I just wanted to level set a little bit here about what we're seeing in the market. Ironically, all this technology and all these people getting used to using it is forcing a couple of dynamics in the market. Whatever happened to shorter, more productive meetings? It seems like we're having more meetings and they're not shorter, not all the time. Meeting length has actually crept up over the last few years. And there are a number of reasons for that. Anything from a poorly planned agenda for the meeting, lack of user training and confidence in technology, or technology that's either too complex, low quality, or doesn't have the feature set for the intended use case. Now, we've seen that the number of participants in a meeting is actually about 9 people. And that's expensive. Those salaries and wages add up. So that time spent can't be unproductive. Something needs to come out of it that is the outcome that is intended. The majority of senior managers agree that meetings are unproductive and inefficient. Something has to change. Every year, Frost & Sullivan surveys thousands of IT decision makers worldwide. And we asked them about their adoption status and future plans for various communications and collaboration technology. We wrapped up our most recent research in December, so well into the COVID experience. We asked this year about what are the plans for office spaces, given all of the outliers that are forcing change. 70% of those decision makers across industries and across sizes said that they do plan to increase their investments in the open office. Now, we don't believe from our feedback that the open office is what we saw in the past, which is a big, long galley with no walls or partitions. In fact, we expect those open offices to be more modular and flexible, with panels or partitions, art, all kinds of creative ways to divide up the spaces so that teams and groups can work together closely over the course of a project. We know that over the course of complex projects, the team tends to shrink and grow depending on the phase of the project. So the space needs to accommodate that as well efficiently. We also see that most organizations are looking to either maintain or expand the number of mid-size rooms and large rooms that they have in their corporate environment. Part of that is because those rooms are most flexible. You can have a number of people in those rooms and change the occupancy as protocols change with pandemic mandates. And finally, we see that small meeting spaces, such as huddle spaces, jump rooms, phone booths, and personal pods, are expected to increase over the next couple of years as well. And that is so that we can continue as individuals who need to meet with people anywhere, can still have that focused private space. All of this aims to accommodate the anticipated higher levels of remote and hybrid work compared to pre-pandemic levels.
So what does that mean in terms of business solutions? I think as we move into this hybrid model where people are, some people are working in the office some of the time, some people are working from home some of the time, and some are permanently in one or the other. We're going to have more meetings that are not just room to room or laptop to laptop. There's going to be a lot more mixed, and we've got to change the technology solutions to suit that. We've got to enable our colleagues and our friends to communicate effectively wherever they are and whatever technologies they're using. Something I say far too much is that, as a technologist, if a customer or a user is aware of the technology they're using, we failed. And obviously a big part of reaction to the pandemic is we don't want to be touching things all the time. So I think some of these drivers of taking things off the table and putting microphones in the ceiling have been accelerated and exacerbated by the pandemic. And I think that's got permanent change.
That's correct. We see the same thing. The increase in staggered and rotating shifts and the need for lower office occupancy and actually better work-life balance will make it more important forever, probably, to be able to work together, whether you're in the office or remote. What we saw in 2020, and I think everyone has broad exposure to this, is unprecedented adoption of cloud meeting services and applications such as Microsoft's Zoom and others. The usage skyrocketed. In our research, we calculated that there was about a threefold increase in paid user licenses, business licenses of conferencing services. The number of people who were licensees exceeded 200 million, which is really incredible if you think about the population of knowledge workers across the world. And our updated forecast, we went back and said, this is incredible. We need to check. We need to recalculate what things look like going forward. And it's true. This growth is going to continue. We expect a compound annual growth rate of about 45% over the next 5 years in paid user licenses. There are a lot of reasons for this. Our IT decision makers perceive a number of benefits from cloud conferencing services, and you can see those on the right here. They're diverse, and there are many. In summary, people expect more from their technology investments than they did in the past.
So it's interesting how much things have changed. Before the pandemic, only 4% of meetings were full video meetings. The vast majority were person to person. And the need, that number is now moved up to over 60%. So that's obviously generated a much greater need for well-designed and equipped meeting rooms and learning spaces. The remote working and hybrid working is going to allow for the decentralization of how we work. It won't be everyone, in most cases, coming into the same office and all working in the same physical location. It's going to give us a lot of freedom and it's going to give us a lot of opportunities, but it's going to give us some challenges as well. And I think, these were trends that were already happening. And it's just the pandemic has sped it up, and it is a permanent change that we're all going to get used to. Back to the office. We're all looking forward to that. It's happening in different speeds in different parts of the world, but it's not a uniform picture. Here in the UK, we've had some organisations have said on date such and such, everyone's back in the office. And we've had other organisations that have said, no, we're not coming back yet. We're going to wait and see what happens. But I think the interesting thing is what do the individuals want to do. And we've had some studies done by various people. This one's a Gensler study, not by Shure, but done by Gensler. And you can see that 44% of people have had it with working from home, or their job doesn't work for it. If you live in a small apartment in the centre of London with kids and dogs and all sorts going on, it's really difficult to work from home.
You mean me, Rob?
I mean you,
James.
There are other people who love working from home. I know Robert was saying earlier he's been working from home for 4,000 years, and they want to stay working at home. I think they're unusual. The majority of people, like myself, want to do a mix of it. Work 2 days in the office and 3 days at home, or as I think 70% of people here are doing, some of the time in the office, a majority of time in the office, but some time working from home. I think it's a really great thing. It gives employment opportunities to people that have difficulty getting into the office, and it means that work-life balance will improve. But again, there are technological implications for that.
We've had people as well, we were talking about this yesterday, that their businesses, the companies they work for, have given them a set amount of money to equip their home offices as well, to make sure they've got the technology that works for them. So that's been a really interesting
I think that we're going to see more of that as well.
I don't think I could work from the office. I think I'm so set in my ways and have my patterns and how I'm productive that it would be sensory overload to go to the office. Now, I do miss the engagement, and that is one of the reasons why I like video. I've been doing video regularly for over 10 years. But now every call is a video call, and we'll speak to that in a few minutes.
So why do people want to go back to the office? I mean, there are a whole bunch of reasons, 9 here, but there's a couple that I think are particularly relevant to the business that we're in. And one, of course, is scheduled meetings with clients, those structured meetings in a meeting room with an agenda. The next one is access to technology. Not everyone has got the right facilities at home, and you need to go to the office to be able to use the systems in the best way that they can be used.
As organizations prepare for the future of work, they typically need to replace technology that they may have invested in. Oftentimes, what we see in meeting rooms that might have video systems in them, the majority of those systems are legacy. They're not SIP. They may be ISDN, H323 systems that run on dedicated networks. And oftentimes that leads to them being rigid. And they need to be replaced so that they're easier to use, interoperate with things more effectively. But overall, our IT decision makers are telling us that technology needs to offer the appropriate level of security, reliability, ease of use, and features to support the way that it needs to be used today.
So I think it's been interesting to see how things have changed. when the pandemic started, we were all immediately thrown out of our offices and sent home, and we had to work. And what people did, I think, is they used the technology they were used to. They used Zoom and Teams and this kind of software codec. Personally, my mother and father in their 80s, I really hope they're not looking, had never used video conferencing of any sort. Within weeks, they were Zoom aficionados and very used to talking to their children on those platforms. And so we all got used to that. We've got used to working in this way and not having the support of IT in the next room because that's the bedroom. Now we're going back, we're going back to the workplace, and we've raised those expectations. We've got the expectation now that actually video conferencing is pretty easy. We can just go and do it. And I think we've got used to using it more. So I think as we go back, people will be using more video conferencing and expecting it just to work. Those legacy systems that Robert spoke about where, going back even a few more years, you typically have an AV technician come in and set up the call for you. That's dead. That's gone.
And they were designed for room to room.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Was the use case.
We've got, having work moving into a hybrid environment, I think one of the things we've got to learn is we need good technology everywhere. You need a good room solution that can pick up everyone in the room. But if you're working from home, the laptop microphone and camera isn't enough sometimes. I mean, when I'm working from home, I use a set of Ionic 50s, the same as Robert's got on, and an MV7, and it means, it means that a remote worker is part of the meeting and their opinions are heard, which is the important thing. We all want to be heard and understood and have an input into the way the business is going, and the only way we can do that is by making a mixed meeting between people in a room and people from home or in a different room work completely seamlessly.
Right, Rob, I agree with that. Video conferencing is top of mind. It's new to a lot of people. It's fun. It's engaging. But it is not the sole panacea for all business communications needs. There are a number of reasons why video maybe isn't necessary in a call. Sometimes we do video just to do video. If you have an internal call with people that work closely together all the time, it's okay not to use video. But you can't have a meeting without audio. Audio is foundational to a meeting. Without audio, you can't communicate, collaborate on complex business topics and information. That needs to be heard and interpreted and conveyed clearly. So what we're seeing is all meetings are founded on audio, and it has to be good audio or else we're going to have headaches. The next most used communications modality is content sharing, right? But it's audio that you're really discussing the information. Audio is king. Without audio, there is no meeting. You're just looking at content by yourself, or maybe sitting next to people looking at content. It needs to be discussed. These are some of our stats around what we're expecting with hybrid work or work from home, both for knowledge workers and for contact center agents who are knowledge workers, but we separate them out for a different use case. The numbers of people that will be working from home at least some of the time are going to be extraordinarily higher than pre-pandemic. And that means we have to have audio that's good enough, and I think Rob touched upon it, is everyone can take part in the conversation no matter where they're located. And that's really important for the engagement, the inclusivity, and to leverage that expertise. Those people are invited to the call for a reason.
So yeah, those numbers are very thought-provoking, Robert. But, the things we've got to think about, again, from a technology perspective, is how can we enable this new way of working? Because otherwise we're going to be less productive, have frustrated colleagues and employees, and it's going to fail. So we've got to think about, from a codec perspective, is a hardware solution or a software solution, or increasingly a hybrid solution to solve a hybrid problem, going to be the way forward? Mm-hmm. We've got to have a consistent experience when we're working from home and when we're in the office. As I said before, you've got to be heard, but also the way you work has got to be the same, the user interface and the difficulty of doing it. The expectation is I just walk into the room and I can have my video conference without having to have a degree in audiology or audiovisual. And finally, the last point is, what are the implications of these two ways of working? Why am I going to be in the office? What's the office for? And what can I do better remotely? And what does it do to the change in how we recruit and base our staff? The team that James and I are in are spread all across Western Europe, so we haven't seen most of them for a year. So what's the implication of how that goes forward?
So we're looking for a level playing field, regardless of where you're working, essentially.
Absolutely.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So whether you're at home,
That's
you're
right.
in the office, or in the boardroom, you get the same sound, you're listened to just as much, and
So you can be as productive and as much of a part of the team wherever you are located in the world.
That's right. We've all been in meetings and calls where there are audio issues, and we've all seen the humorous YouTube clips where meetings go awry. Someone's dog is barking, someone has other background noise, someone is speaking on mute. It's funny, but for me, it's a nervous kind of humor because it rings so true. I think we can all relate to that. There is poor audio for one person on a call. It affects everyone. That person's opinion, that person's ability to absorb the information are impacted, and that impacts the team. If that person has disruptive audio, it can impact everyone on the team. And as mentioned before, everyone sitting there is making a wage. So that the call cost is going up every some kind of disruption or distraction. So high quality audio is not just nice to have, it's a must have. It is foundational to productivity for the entire group or even for a one-on-one call. There are a number of ways that high quality audio improves the efficiency and reduces the cost of those interactions. And those are listed here. Audio needs to be a productivity enabler and not a disruptor. It needs to perform its job and get out of the way so that people can have their discussions and focus on the content at hand.
I think you're right, Robert. I think most of us have been on calls when there's a young child flying around the back or a dog barking in the background. That we can live with. Bad audio, we can't. When we can't hear what our colleagues and people we're trying to collaborate with, when we can't understand them, that's when frustration sets in and people switch off.
And if you're the person that's always got bad audio, that means you're going to be less regarded.
Yeah, you're the person
and
that's
have
not
less of
listened
an
to.
input.
Yeah, agree.
Don't want to be that person.
And we're past the time where that's forgivable. We really are. We spent a year working from home trying to get this right. And it's time to take it seriously. It's not funny anymore. It's frustrating. It's a waste of time. So part of the reason why our forecast for video is so high is that there were a lot of stopgap measures taken. There were a lot of DIY, do-it-yourself, taken by different organizations and users. It's time to get it right.
Absolutely. And it's, we've been talking a lot about the future up until this point. And we actually did a study purely by chance sometime before the COVID problems we had. And so it's kind of a snapshot of where we are, really, because there's not been a lot of upgrading happened over the last year because people have been working from home. And And going back then, the study was done independently. The people who were contacted were IT professionals and users of the systems, and they weren't told it was an audio company calling. 4 out of the 5 most common complaints were about audio. So we've got some work to do. And those complaints were background noise, James's child shouting in the background. Difficulty in connecting, that's the one that's not audio, obviously. Echo, this would typically be echo on the far end. I can hear my voice coming back at me. Audio cutting out, self-explanatory really. And someone in a meeting, this is typical of a meeting room where you can't hear them. You can hear the people at the front of the room perfectly well, but not at the back. And it's typically a solution where you've got a camera and an all-in-one unit in a room that's too big for it. And we can break that down a little bit more. 44% is background noise. You've got problems with internet speed. We need to get that fixed, and that's really out of our remit. Desk space is a problem when working from home. Seating and ergonomics, and having the right tools and equipment, going back to why people want to go back to working from the office. So organisations need to think about these, and if they are going to allow people to work from home, to get the productivity out of them, they've got to enable them to work from home by giving them the right tools, and going back, on an audio level, to providing them with the right microphones and headphones and screens and seats and everything else, so that they can actually work comfortably.
Well, I think they need to as well. We can't jam 12 people into an 8-person meeting room anymore. Social distancing doesn't allow it. So, even those bigger rooms can't accommodate, the larger meetings. So people do need to work from home, and they need those tools to do so.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're still professionals. They might be working from home, but they're still professionals. I wear these all the time. I work from home. There's no one else here, but there are people cutting the grass. There are dogs. There are delivery people. I want to concentrate. And the only way to do that is to tune everything else out. And what we're seeing from enterprises is, to a point you made a few moments ago, Rob, is a lot of organizations are right now having professional assessments conducted, proof of concept deployments. So they're getting ready to begin to outfit their meeting spaces. And if your company is not already in that phase, you need to get there soon.
That's interesting you should say that as well, Robert. And hopefully they've learned the lesson over the lockdown period that, video is not the most important thing, and audio is the I'm not saying the be all and end all, but it's the be all and end all pretty much of how a meeting should work.
We've been having audio only meetings for a very long time, ever since the telephone was invented.
Exactly so.
So absolutely, I'm sorry, I spoke over you. Absolutely, a lot of people join a video bridge and don't turn on their video camera. Their video feed is not on. They're just having a phone call or an audio conversation on a video bridge. That's perfectly acceptable, but that is extremely common.
Yeah, and the numbers, I think it's 5 times more important to have good audio than a good video. And you think about it, that sounds counterintuitive until you think, what's a typical video call encompass? You all join the meeting. Hopefully people have got the cameras on. I prefer it that way. We all say hello to each other and a little bit of chit chat. And then we start sharing a presentation or a spreadsheet or whatever fascinating thing is the core of the meeting. So it's audio and content that we need.
So one of the things that has come from this experience over the last 15 months is behavioral changes. People are reticent right now with shared surfaces. They don't want to touch things that are common and other people are touching them. We know that protocols will call, and they are calling now, for more extensive cleaning. And one of the ways that we can help in that regard is intelligent audio that doesn't necessitate end users to touch the equipment in the room. You don't need your end users to be repositioning microphones and speakers and disconnecting, connecting, cabling. I don't know a single facilities manager or an IT admin that wants that. End users shouldn't really be touching the shared equipment. It's deployed where it is for a reason, for coverage in the room. Now, on the flip side, administrators don't want to go room to room readjusting everything, or just power cycling equipment, or running firmware updates. That's expensive. IT time is one of the most quantifiable pieces of an ROI calculation. So if an admin can perform most of their responsibilities remotely, it's much more efficient and cost effective. So what we're looking at is contactless technology in the meeting room, audio settings that can be adjusted remotely from the web to accommodate different configurations in the room, different numbers of users, so that there's full coverage both from the input and output sides of that meeting room.
Yeah, I completely agree, Robert. And there are technological solutions to this. We can make a room know that when we've opened our partition that it needs to turn on the extra microphones, or if it's a ceiling array microphone, select a load pattern that suits the setup of the room. Audio can adjust itself, and cameras can as well, let's be honest. So what do we expect going forward? I don't think social distancing is going to go away anytime soon. I think people will be uncomfortable getting too close. We need to provide secure, clean meeting spaces. We at Shure, we have an upgraded cleaning regime in all our offices in the UK. And obviously that costs money. The more stuff you've got to clean, the more it's going to cost you. So taking things out of touching range, putting microphones and speakers in the ceiling helps with that. We've said it enough times, but I think we need to say it again. We need to accommodate and support a remote workforce. It's not good enough just to say, yes, you can work from home. We need to say, here are the tools to help you do it. And here's the training. What's the best way of working? It's not going to change that. Reliance on technology to be a communication medium. Obviously, if everyone's not in the same building, we're going to need some kind of technology to help us talk. It's going to be a permanent change. It's an acceleration of something that was already happening, but it's a really quite extreme acceleration that we need to get ready for.
And we are getting there with the touchless meeting rooms already. I mean, this is just a very quick, typical room example. We've got a table here. We've got a switch in a comms room somewhere. We've got a couple of MXA 910 seating arrays. Just going back to the switch on a Cat 6 cable. We've got an IMX room license there, sat in the room PC. We've got speakers in the ceiling, again, over the IP system. None of that is on the table. None of that is touchless. In fact, I think the only thing that is touchless on the table there is the network mute button, which when people hear me talking, they tend to try and bang those anyway. So tables will always get banged with that. But there's a typical example of how stuff just does not sit on the table. It's all in the ceiling, away from people's touching it. It just enables people to have much more natural meetings, much more safe meetings while keeping socially distant. So it's an example for us there. And I think that wraps up the session. So I'll start going through the questions and answers. So just before we go into the Q&A, and there's quite a few questions coming in already, I'm going to try and see, we've got a couple of questions that we'd like to do as a part of a poll. Now, hopefully, this is going to pop up on my screen. So bear with me just a second. If I launch, you should be able to see that question now on your screens. Hopefully. The question is, what's the most important thing that's in the office you do not have at home? Select all that apply. And hopefully you'll be able to see that and start answering. And if not, Then we'll just pretend this section never happened, blame live TV, and move quickly into the Q&A.
Mine would not be the espresso machine because I buy better coffee than they do at work, but my machine itself is not as good. So that's kind of a trick question, I think.
We're going to have to discuss this afterwards. I'm a bit of a coffee nut.
Right, so I'm not sure if this is working because right now no one's voted, so apologies for that.
Okay.
We live and learn, but we'll get back to what we're good at, which is talking about audio. So I've had a few questions come in as the webinar's been happening, and I'm going to go through them now. So the first one I've got here is, we've not standardised on a video conferencing service yet. Should we make that decision before investing in audio? I'm going to throw that to you, Rob.
I think if you're deploying at scale, yes, and there's a number of reasons for that. First of all is, as we've talked about before, ease of use. If you've got a different solution in each different room, it's going to be very difficult for your users to understand how to use it. And then moving on from that, consistency of experience, is it going to sound as good and look as good from each room? If you don't do that, everyone will just book the good room. And finally, of course, support. If you've got 500 rooms you're looking after and they're all different, it's going to be extremely difficult and expensive to support. So yeah, deploying at scale, I absolutely standardise as much as you can. Rooms are different, but standardise as much as you can.
Okay. We've got another one here. It's more of a statement, so thanks for this one, Mark. And I'm going to throw this across to you, Robert, because I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are. Our organisation of 5,000 plus people, they do regular surveys of their staff, and the most recent one suggested that 85% of their workforce only wanting to work from the office 1 day a week, which seems an awful lot, but it'd be good to see what your thoughts are on that, Robert.
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, right? The ability to concentrate, not have to commute. Some people, like Rob just said, maybe better coffee. But I think the reality is you have to look at the role and the tasks that user or that employee is supposed to perform in their jobs. Can they do that remotely? I think one of the underlying things of remote work and this whole shift that we've seen over the last 15, 16 months is, paper-based workflows need to be digitized, right? So you need to be able to work from anywhere and access your tools, access information, access resources if they're other people, if it's data. So you really have to look at what the user needs to get their hands on quite physically. And can they perform that effectively? And the other thing that we're seeing a lot is the use of analytics to better understand what the performance and productivity is based on the tools that users have and where they're working as well. So new ways to measure, and therefore you make the decision, who can come in, who needs to be in, and who can work from anywhere.
And if we look at those numbers, at any time, 15% of the people are going to be there.
Yeah.
Anyhow, and then 20% of the 85% who don't want to be there are also going to be there. And James has calculated the total percentage, I'm sure, but there's still quite a lot of people who are in the office as well. So it kind of bears out the hybrid working solution.
Still calculate.
Okay, fair enough.
Do it with the poll.
We'll come back later.
The next three questions, all in the name of true collaboration, is you guys pointing out that you couldn't see questions in the poll. Nope, can't see any questions, etc. So thanks for that one. But I want to throw the next one across to you, Rob. Can you repeat what headset and microphone you were recommending for home workers?
Sure. I mean, this is what works for these. Are actually mine. These are Ionic 50s. Perhaps not surprisingly, they're a Shure product. They're available in 3 colours: brown, which is what I wear, black, which Robert is wearing, and white, which we're both too old to make look good. The other product I use is...
I wear white.
Yeah, right. This is an MV7 microphone. You can use it with an XLR or USB, which is what I use. Oh, there's a black one, available in 2 colours. You've now seen both of them. And it's a very good close-up microphone. It's designed for podcasters, actually, but it gives you really good audio quality. I've got mine mounted on a cheap microphone stand behind the screen in my home office. If you need further information, contact your local Shure rep.
You're going to make a sale, I think, Rob.
I know, yeah.
Good work. How much should it cost to outfit? Oh, we've already done that one. So it's how are companies organising the tasks of equipping remote workers? Are employees providing with stipends to buy for themselves, or are IT making decisions for them? And I think that's a nice question.
I think it's a mix. I think there are a lot of companies that are giving a lump of cash with very little guidance.
Yeah.
There are other companies that are providing hardware, and I think that's something we've seen more inquiries on fairly recently. And some that are saying, here's some money, this is what we recommend. I think providing guidance is a good idea. Not everyone is an IT specialist or an audio specialist. So, yeah. But I think, as we said earlier in the presentation, providing some equipment and providing some training is essential to make it a success.
Yeah, it's all over the map right now as people try to figure this out. I think one of the most important things is, and Rob, you touched on it, I think on the first question, standardizing on multiple things. But one of the things we need to standardize is on performance, right? So IT needs to have a certain level of specs that says, here are give some suggestions, as you just said. Here's what's good. Don't be cheap. Don't be narrow-minded. Here's some things that we think work good with our solutions. So IT needs to at least have some guidance in there. And then how you go about costing it out is a whole other thing.
Yeah, I think maybe, we need to get away from thinking about this is how I'm equipping my meeting room and this is what I'm doing for the people working at home. It's a complete solution these days because the meetings happen in both places.
And we are getting customers asking us for home working bundles right now, which is something we're having to work on at Shure as well. Right. So people are thinking about it more and more. And Rob, this is another one I'm going to fire at you because it's another sales question. You're killing it so far, right? Taking my job off.
I do hope so.
How much did it cost to fit out a mid-sized meeting room?
Yeah. I'm not going to answer the question. It's too much of a wide question. Do you need to acoustically treat it? One of the things that I think we touched on briefly is the starting point is the room itself. If it's a glass box with concrete floors and concrete ceilings, it's going to be really challenging to make it sound good, and it's going to be a lot of money spent on acoustics before you start on the equipment. So I don't want to just pick a number out the air because it'll be irrelevant, but it's a few thousand for audio to do it really well in a medium-sized, large room. You compare that with the amount of money you're paying in salary for the people that use the room, it's actually a decent investment.
Yeah, I think that the money you lose from minutes lost because audio can't be heard seriously outweighs that.
Well, if you spend 5 minutes of every meeting faffing around with the audio, multiply that by the salaries of all the people in the meeting room, you're going to pay for the audio system pretty quickly.
Yeah. So
right, and if think about the real estate cost, right? You want people in that room, you want it to be utilized.
Yeah. So Robert, one for you. The debate over best of breed versus single source solutions continues. What are your thoughts, sir?
Oh boy, a best of breed can be bundled solutions. So if you buy audio equipment that is certified for Zoom or Microsoft Teams, that's best of breed, right? But they're certified to operate together at a certain performance and quality level. But really, I think that is the underlying most important thing, because even some single source solutions don't work good together. So it needs to be, it needs to have a certain spec of performance that can be expected. And really, if you look at the overall collaboration market, there is no single source across the entire UC&C stack because no one provider can provide email all the way down to analytics to devices. So at the end of the day, you really need to think about the total solution.
Okay, and with that in mind, and this is a question to both of you, so Rob, if you want to take it first,
Sure.
How early in the evaluation and purchase cycle should facilities engage with IT when outfitting our meeting rooms? How can we make that happen?
I think the first thing that they need to do is engage with the users. It's great facilities and IT talking to each other and talking to the technologists and systems providers. You need to understand what your users are talking about.
Yeah.
And then that's the next step, is really start IT and facilities talking together with whoever else is involved in the design and making sure that you don't, I think what used to happen a lot is someone would build a room and they'd come along, right, do AV in here. Mm-hmm. And it's, the purpose of the room is to have a meeting in. You need to think of it holistically, but start with the users every time.
And that reflects back to that earlier question, how much does it cost, right? You can really bring down your cost if you have the end-to-end or the holistic vision in mind, so that you can be prepared to install as you're constructing the room, rather than having to retrofit. The other thing that Rob, you just mentioned is, who are the stakeholders? Facilities, IT, users, that's a great point, but also HR, physical security. How are you going to secure the room? HR, what's the occupancy supposed to be over time, and how does that change? So I think more people need to be involved in the decision because they bring a different perspective to it.
Yeah, I think the more time you spent at the beginning of a project making sure you really understand what you need, the better. Because, actually delivering the technology, designing the systems is really the easy bit. It's making sure they're what you need is the tough bit.
Good stuff. And that's the last of the questions. So unless anything else comes in, is there anything you'd like to add, Robert, before we call it a day?
Well, I enjoyed this very much. I'm passionate about it as a home user, as well as someone in the technology research field. And I would say Rob is totally right. Consider users to be not only the employee base, but IT as well. And think about everyone that touches the solution as you design it and evaluate your projects.
Thanks, Robert. Anything you want to add, Rob?
I guess one thing is that, we've been talking about the future of work. We know we're in a very quick changing time. And pretty much anyone who talks on this subject is going to be wrong to some extent or another, including the three of us. But if you enable people to work effectively from wherever they're going to work, you'll probably be able to weather wherever we end up. So, think about a complete meeting chain, not just equipping a room.
Good stuff.
Right.
Well, that concludes the webinar for today. So thanks to Rob, thanks to Robert at the far end, and most importantly, thanks to you guys for tuning in and listening. Hope you've got some interesting takeaways from this. We've got more webinars coming up, so please sign up to them and join us. Thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you again in the very near future. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.